What's going on, guys? Dropadooski here. Today I want to go over the changes to the Jade Witch Doctor in patch 2.6.1, the current PTR cycle that we're in for Diablo 3. Jade Witch Doctor has been my favorite build in the game for as long as I can remember, but it's always had issues in the past with survivability, the amount of damage it can put out, and its ability to compete with the other Witch Doctor builds that were, you know, the quote-unquote meta of the last couple of seasons. Well, with the current changes in the PTR, it is really, really strong, really, really tanky, and it has made it even more fun to play. In the past, there was a variation of the Jade Witch Doctor where you could run a Convention of the Elements, but by doing so, you had to remove Unity. And this build in previous cycles was very, very squishy when running the Unity variation. So it required a high amount of paragons and also a high amount of fishing in order to get anything that could potentially compete with Firebats in previous metas or the Lawn Witch Doctor from last season. So now, with the changes that we've gotten on the PTR, there's been a significant damage buff to the Jade set, and they've given us a significant amount of damage reduction, so it is pushing really, really high. So let's jump over and take a look at the setup and the gear here. So in the previous variation of the Jade Witch Doctor, on the 6-piece set here, you can see it says Soul Harvest reduces damage taken by 50% for 12 seconds and consumes your damage over time effects on enemies, instantly dealing 1,200 seconds worth of remaining damage. The previous setup for this build, you did not get the damage reduction, and it only did 300 seconds worth of damage. So they quadrupled the damage output of this, and they gave us a 50% damage reduction as of the patch to the PTR yesterday. So effectively, they've given us a free Unity. And with that change, you can run Convention of Elements, and it runs very, very smoothly. I'm telling you, this is so much fun to play with the damage buffs and utilizing poison, the poison rotation on the Convention of the Elements ring. When you soul harvest on everything that is haunted and locust swarmed, you can really see the damage. I mean, especially if you're standing in an Oculus ring, you can. I did a 95 in one key yesterday and was killing yellow packs and blue packs on 2 poison cycle rotations, so maybe three or four soul harvests. It really, really decimates the group. Now, there's some other quality of life changes that have been made to Witch Doctor in general that have also helped this build become more strong and more viable. Soul Harvest. Now Soul Harvest can refresh all of its stacks when you hit only one enemy. So when you start into a grift, you have 0 stacks, and when you're utilizing the Sacred Harvester and the Lakumbas for the damage reduction, and then getting up to the 10 stacks with the Sacred Harvester, you walk in, you have no stacks, you grab 10. In order to keep that 10, you used to have to hit 10 enemies and they would stagger fall off. Now, if you hit one enemy with your next Soul Harvest, it refreshes your max stacks, which makes the boss fights very, very nice for this build. At the end of the guide, I will put my 95 run so you can watch me go through and see the gameplay. This build utilizes the 6-piece Jade set. So you use all 6 pieces of the Jade set, prioritizing haunt damage on chest and shoulders, and you can also get haunt damage on your offhand. So you want haunt as your primary damage output with this setup. So you get haunt damage wherever you can get it. This build also utilizes area damage, so you get area damage on a couple of pieces here. I don't mind taking a little bit of cooldown because you're doing damage basically when you're soul harvesting, and casting Haunt, as you can see here with the 4-piece set, has the cooldown. So Soul Harvest gains the effect of every rune and has the cooldown reduced by 1 second every time you cast Haunt or Locust Swarm. So you're consistently refreshing the cooldown of Soul Harvest, but cooldown also helps with other survivability things here as well. So you get Horrify, which is really, really strong in helping you survive, because you want to utilize the damage buff from T-Pledge and Compass Rose the Endless Walk set whenever you can. So if you can stand still and get the 100% damage buff before you soul harvest, it's going to make a significant impact in how much damage you do when you soul harvest with the Jade set. So in utilizing Horrify and Spirit Walk correctly, you can stand still and get that damage buff. And then especially if you can line that up with an Oculus Ring and the poison rotation or poison cycle on the Convention of the Elements, it does really, really big damage. So you're utilizing the 6-piece set here. There are a couple variations on offhand and belt that you can do. We'll go over the tanky variation first, and then we'll go on into the more heavy damage variation. On the tanky variation, you're going to take Belt of Transcendence, which gives you the Fiendish Sycophants every time you cast a haunt. It just makes meat shields, helps keep you alive. If I were running hardcore, I would never not take this belt. And you also take the Vile Hive. The Vile Hive, Locust Swarm gains the effect of Pestilence, which allows you to take Cloud of Insects as well to get that damage reduction. Our Sacred Harvester weapon, obviously this is one of the best weapons in the game for Witch Doctor. Currently the only build that I can think of that wouldn't be using this as the equipped weapon is Lawn Witch Doctor, but for every other build you're going to be using Sacred Harvester, and you can take Furnace here in the cube, or you can take Wormwood. I like to take Furnace as you get more burst damage on those elites, but Wormwood can help make the Locust Swarm gameplay a little less wonky rather than you having to cast it a few times to get it out there. Wormwood really just makes it so you don't even have to think about Locust Swarm. Then you'll be, since we're on the cube, we'll take a look. You're going to use Quetzalcoatl here. Locust Swarm and Haunt now deal their damage in half the normal duration, and then Ring of Emptiness. Ring of Emptiness makes this build, back when the Ring of Emptiness ring was buffed, makes this build very, very strong. So you get that 300% increased damage to enemies afflicted by Haunt and Locust Swarm, which this build is completely synergizes around those two curses. This is a curse build, you know, a curse build with Soul Harvest being able to proc all of that damage at once. On the rings, with this variation, you're going to use Convention of the Elements. Here you can have some cooldown, or you can just opt for the full area damage, or attack speed also works as well. If you want a little bit faster haunts to get those Soul Harvests up, you can take a couple of spots of attack speed. But you can vary here, just depending on what your setup feels you need, so test a little bit with that. And then there's the T-Pledge Compass Rose. You're prioritizing poison damage here as you take Haunt, Poison Spirit, and you're going to want that on your Amulet and your Bracers. And quickly we'll go over the changes you can make here for the heavy damage before we go into the abilities. Now you can put on the Haunting Bridle rather than the Belt of Transcendence here. It gives you double, or it releases one extra spirit when you haunt, which means that your haunts are all over the place, giving you more damage and more enemies afflicted. Also, you can switch that out. If you're going to run this variation, you would want to switch out the Vile Hive for Henry's, the kitty cat, because the damage reduction you get from that when you run into a group of enemies is really, really high, and it helps you survive when you're running the Haunt Belt. Now let's go over the abilities quickly. So your primary damage output is Haunt, so you're going to take Haunt, Poison Spirit. Haunted enemies take 20% more damage from your attacks. This is standard for any Haunt setup. It's a very, very strong 20% damage increase. So Haunt, Poison Spirit. Piranha, Pranados, just for pulling things together and also managing damage reduction and keeping mobs, you know, where you want them. Horrify, Frightening Aspect. This, gain a 50% additional armor for 8 seconds after casting Horrify. So if you're in those sticky situations where there's a ton of mobs around here and you're spamming Haunt to try and get your Soul Harvest back up and waiting for that poison rotation, Horrify, and you get a chunk of damage reduction so that you don't die while you're waiting. Spirit Walk, Severance. You can go Jaunt here as well to give you that extended duration. I just like to move fast in situations where I want to get out of something, or I'm say for instance there's Frozen coming up and I can see that I can get my Soul Harvest off before the Frozen pops, and then I want to get out or I want to avoid that damage. I like to keep Severance for the additional movement speed. It's just my preferable Spirit Walk rune, but you can take Jaunt there as well. Soul Harvest Languish, this is standard. You increase your armor by 10% per harvested enemy and reduce their movement speed by 80%. This, coupled with the Sacred Harvester, gives you a ton of armor and survivability, and Soul Harvest is how you proc your damage with this build, so it's required. Then Locust Swarm, Cloud of Insects. Cloud of Insects, enemies affected by Locust Swarm deal 25% reduced damage. When you're using the offhand here, you gain the Pestilence rune which gives you the 100% chance to jump to other enemies. So when you get this for free, you can take the Cloud of Insects. When you don't get it for free, I like to have Pestilence. So if I run the Henrys and the Haunt, I take Pestilence. When I take the Vile Hive, I will take Cloud of Insects. And then for the passives, this I like to take as a quality of life thing. I have seen someone in our Discord community had done a 104 last night with 1 key and didn't think that this was required. If you're playing hardcore, always have your passive here for the moments where you were going to die and you want the extra life. I'll take it in softcore as well, just because there's no reason to die when you don't really have another passive that I think I would want to take. Maybe Gruesome Feast here. So Spirit Vessel, Creeping Death, obviously. Creeping Death did get a buff as well on the PTR, and since this is a Haunt build or a Locust Swarm build, you're going to want to use that standard. Confidence Ritual for the 25% increased damage, and Grave Injustice for the cooldowns. This enables you to spam Soul Harvest as things die. So you'll see it in the run that I post after we're done here. When you have a bunch of enemies die, Soul Harvest is immediately off of cooldown based on Grave Injustice. So you spam it and deal more damage. Spam it, deal more damage. Now, a couple things I want to go over in talking about that, and you'll notice it on the boss fight. You will consume all of the damage from Locust Swarm and Haunt over time, right? So what you're going to need to remember to do, especially on the boss fights, is after about 3 or 4 Soul Harvests, so you're haunting, Locust Swarm, Soul Harvest, that's one of your big chunks of damage on the boss. After, I would actually, just to be safe, 2 or 3 Soul Harvests, make sure you save up enough mana to reapply Locust Swarm, because it will fall off and you will notice that. You're losing the 300% from Ring of Emptiness, so you're not dealing that huge chunk of damage when poison rolls around. So if you go in to do a Soul Harvest and you're on the boss fight and you see that you Soul Harvested and he loses this, you know, a teeny little bit of health, then you know he's not swarmed anymore. I've consumed all of the swarm. Go in and swarm him again, and then continue the rotation, and you'll see on the next Soul Harvest that it does a chunk of damage. So it does not last forever because you are consuming all of the damage from this. That is how the build works. I'm pretty sure that's everything we need to cover here. Oh, one last thing. Let's go over the legendary gems. You're going to be using Bane of the Trapped, Bane of the Stricken, and Esoteric Alteration. Now, there was a variation that I used to run, and I've talked about in previous Jade guides, where I ditch Esoteric for Gogok of Swiftness, which gives me an extra couple of Soul Harvests throughout the Rift, you know, giving me more damage. You can tinker with that variation as well, but I do like the Esoteric as of right now. With the, now I'm getting the free Unity with the past the 6-set bonus and utilizing conventions. Esoteric really helps me just survive when I'm standing in the middle of a pack and they have Frozen or Molten or Arcane. Just getting that non-physical damage reduction is huge. So you can play with this, switch out Esoteric or Gogok, it's up to you, and see which works best for your build. As we wrap up here, I want to say thank you to everybody who's been checking out the videos and subscribed to the channel. If you like the video, please thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. If not, let me know what changes you'd like me to make. If there's more stuff you want to see off the PTR, put some comments below, or if you have any questions. Another big shout out to all my followers and subscribers on Twitch. The stream has been growing like crazy. If you have not come to the stream, please come check it out. I start Monday through Saturday from 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time until 7 or 8, and on Saturday I end at 5. I do an early stream on Saturday. So 6 days a week we're on Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Drapadusky. Everybody, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed the Jade build. I really think it's going to be viable as a solo push if it's not changed again, and if it is changed again, I will update the video and let you guys know. Everybody have a great time this week and enjoy the run. I'm going to post the 95 run here now. Thank you guys. Peace.